Hey, welcome to the Daily Drive. If you're navigating traffic right now, welcome. If you're working out, welcome. If you're taking a walk with your earbuds in, welcome. If you're headed to school, welcome. If you're currently eating a McRib, what are you thinking? I have no idea what is in those things. But wherever you are and whatever you're doing right now, thanks for joining us on the Daily Drive. My name is Mike, and we are walking through an amazing book of the Bible that is all about Jesus. It's called the Gospel of John. Gospel just simply means good news, and John writes this like he is saying, you talk about some good news. You're going to be blown away by Jesus, what he said, what he did, how he saw people, how he touched them. I mean, these stories will give you goosebumps, and I'm writing them down so that you might believe in him, and by believing, you'd have life in his name. We're in chapter 4, and we come to a great story today that might take us a few days to unpack, but have you ever had that feeling where you knew everyone was talking about you? You know that little group of people in the hallway at school close to your locker, or that cluster of people around the coffee pot at work, or some neighbors at a barbecue, and you walk up and all the conversation suddenly stops? And you can tell by the glances, the awkward silence, the forced smiles, what they were talking about. Ever had that happen? Now, some of that can be personal insecurity and paranoia. I mean, if you go to a football game and think when the team huddles up, they're talking about you, you might need some therapy. But other times it's very real, like a little too real. And when you become the topic of conversation, it makes you want to hide. Just close the blinds, stay in bed, withdraw from all contact, all conversation, all touch, just isolate yourself. It's the kind of thing that makes you want to come to the well at noon. She was a woman that people talked about. She had a past, the kind of reputation that people huddle up and whisper about. So to avoid the stares, to avoid the whispers, the rumors, the judgment of the crowd, she walks every day to get water at Jacob's well when nobody else does, at high noon. And when she comes, she carries with her an empty bucket and an empty life. And she brings a life where she feels unknown, unworthy, unsatisfied, unfulfilled, and unloved. So I want to pick up the story in John chapter 4, such a great story. And y'all know the difference between a northern story and a southern story. A northern story begins with once upon a time, and a southern story begins with y'all ain't gonna believe this. And this one, y'all ain't gonna believe this. And the story begins with a verse that at first glance doesn't seem like a big deal, but it is. This is John 4, verse 4. Now Jesus had to go through Samaria. Man, there's a whole lot packed in that little verse right there. You see, the truth is, he didn't really have to go through Samaria. There were other ways. In fact, every other Jewish person would always Google map or Waze their route over the Jordan River and travel up the east side to avoid having to step one foot in Samaria, because Jews despise Samaritans. I mean, you think strife and unrest in the Middle East is a relatively new thing? Oh, no. There's some long-time history there. These people have destroyed one another's temples. The Samaritans actually scattered human remains and bones in the Jewish temple. It got so ugly that Jewish children were taught if they passed a Samaritan on a dusty road, they were to go immediately to the temple and have a priest ceremonially wash them, or they would be declared unclean by God. In fact, Jewish law allowed anyone to testify in a court of law except Samaritans. Why? Because one of the stipulations for testifying was, and I quote, "You have to be human." Even though they were created by and believed in the same God, even though they descended from the same people, the Jews regarded Samaritans as less than. They saw them as religious and social half-breeds because generations ago they had intermarried. They'd built their own temple and allowed all kinds of idol worship and other false religions to creep in. So in the Jewish mind, they were the holy ones, and the Samaritans were, those people. There was no way that Samaritans would ever be allowed into the kingdom of God. They were all past the point of no return. That their religious leaders pounded that junk in their hearts and their minds, and they bought into it. They actually believed the lies that they were superior to those people. One of the problems in our country right now is a those people mentality. I can hardly read social media. In fact, I had to take a sustained break from it. Such a lack of humility and kindness, so much division and name-calling, even violence pointing toward those people. I like what Anne Lamott says, you can safely assume that you've created God in your own image. But it turns out that God hates all the same people you do. You need to know, it's a never those people with Jesus. Just people. And I believe that's why it says Jesus had to go. So this week, as we break down this story, why not go to God today and ask him? God, as we walk through this story, I'm going to ask you, do I have any those people in my life right now? I mean, honestly, God, is there someone or a group of someones that I see is less than me? Do I have any I'm superior to you junk going on inside of me? God, help me see people, all people, the way that Jesus did. Let that be your prayer today. It's going to be mine. And we'll pick up this story again tomorrow. We'll see you then.